Hi, my name is Linus, and this is my speech on texting and driving. First, I'd like to open with this question. Imagine you're on your way to work, and your boss sends you a text. Whilst you're driving, you glance in at your phone to look at it. When you glance back up from reading that text, you're seconds away from hitting pedestrian with no time to stop. Texting whilst driving makes you 23 more times likely to be involved in a crash. However, as of 2024, over 47% of drivers have admitted to either reading or sending a text whilst driving. Over the course of this speech, I will talk to you about the dire consequences of texting whilst driving. The three main points I'll be going over is texting and driving taking your attention away from the road, texting while driving increasing the chance of a crash, and also the laws and PSAs that can help educate people, whilst also the news that displays it. First, we're going to talk about how texting and driving can take your attention away from the road. Now, many people will give excuses on why they can text and drive. One of which being that they're good at multitasking. They talk about how they can sit at home and do 2 assignments at once. Well, you may be able to do those 2 assignments at once, but scientifically proven, the human brain can't effectively do 2 tasks at the same time, such as texting and driving. Now, whilst people may think, okay, so I can still do the assignments, just not to the extent I would if I did them one at a time, I can just do the same with driving. Whilst yes, you may be able to do those 2 assignments, you're going to get 2 C's. However, the consequences for texting and driving are much worse. If you just focused on the road, the likelihood of you making it to your destination safely is much higher. But texting and driving adds another factor for you to mess up. And when you mess up while texting and driving, the consequences are much higher than just receiving a bad grade in class. It can lead to your car being destroyed, injuries, and even fatalities. Another example is that people will say, I'll just take a quick glance at my phone. I won't look away from the road for that long. Well, one example I saw for this was when traveling 55 miles an hour down a road, looking away for just 5 seconds means you've traveled the length of a football field. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the length of a football field and how truly long 100 yards is, which is why it's crazy to think about if you're traveling 55 miles an hour over the course of just 5 seconds, you've already traveled that whole length, which can cause you to miss red lights, causing crashes, stop signs, even pedestrian crosswalks. Another one similar to the first one is people saying how they can still focus on the road and text. However, whilst this may be true, partially true, according to the National Safety Council, texting and driving leads to 37% less of your brain focusing on actually driving, meaning that 30% of your brain that should be focused on the road is focused on sending a silly text, which can cause more accidents. Now that we've seen the ways your brain can get distracted from texting and driving, let's look at some statistics. As you can see here, I have a statistic on the side talking about how the different injury crash causes. So many people may think that alcohol and drugs is going to be at the very, very top of this list. However, that is not the case. We see the two at the second and third highest are inattention and distraction, and failing to give way and stopping. So distraction being at the third highest is crazy to me, because I have always thought that alcohol or drugs would be at the very top, but texting and driving is much, much higher than that. Also pointed out a failing to give way to a stop, because as I expressed in my previous point, how you can travel the length of a football field in 5 seconds just from checking a text. The likelihood of you failing to give way at an intersection or stop at a pedestrian stop or stop sign is much higher, which could also be the potential causes for the crashes here listed in the statistic. Another statistic I would like to point out is in 2022, over 3,000 motor vehicle deaths were directly linked to being distracted while driving. This is such a huge number. 3,000 people died because they just wanted to check their phone. These statistics prove how dangerous texting and driving can truly be. Now let's see some real world examples. So many laws and PSAs can help talk about how texting and driving, but one of the greatest examples is the stuff we see on the news. So on the right here, I'd like to look at this one on the right first, and these two trucks shows one of the less dire consequences of texting while driving. As you can see, two trucks got collided. However, the accident doesn't look too bad. This truck may be totaled, but no airbags deployed, no major injuries. I would say it sucks that your truck got totaled. However, I would say this is one of the less dire consequences of texting while driving. If we look over here on the left, we can see the very dire consequences. Now, I don't know the backstory to this image. I just know it came from ABC and it was directly linked to texting and driving. Now, as you can see, the roof of the vehicle has been completely destroyed, and the left side of the vehicle is also destroyed. Now, whilst I don't know specifically what happened in this gruesome image, I think it's safe to say that at the very least an injury was happened. Now, I'd like to ask you all to put this question. How many of you realize how truly dangerous texting and driving is? Now, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question. Which of you are ready to help start being part of a statistic that literally leads to the death of thousands every year? And which of you would like to help stop indirectly and also directly putting your life and other people's lives in danger? Thank you.